Welcome! Welcome to the weekly Hug Nation broadcast. This is a very special Hug Nation. Less about what we're going to talk about and more about who we're talking with. I'm here with my brother Jim.
Hello, hello.
This is a weekly live broadcast that happens at 1 o'clock Pacific time, live, and then the recordings, the archives are put onto YouTube, the Hug Nation channel. But you know that because you're subscribed. One thing that I wanted to touch on, because I often describe you as a fucking funny guy. Because the way you have sex is so silly.
That's not
a funny fucking guy is what I usually say. Sorry, I phrased that wrong.
Is that not how you're supposed to do it? I thought back to back. Is that not? Am I?
So, and comedy is so huge right now. I know we both listen to comedy podcasts. We'll get into a little bit more of that. And we grew up as cable became a thing. The comedy, what was it called? Comedy Central. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we got and specifically, I think a relevant conversation or to topic because Dave Chappelle has his closer special that just came out that is getting all sorts of controversy. Now, neither of us have seen it,
right?
So we can't speak to it specifically. But I just wanted to talk about the role of comedy and the way that we are experiencing it now and in our past, and why aren't you a professional comedian?
Yeah, I'm not that funny, and funny fucking there's a very small audience.
It's a very target market, yeah.
Right, yeah. You'd be surprised.
It's actually one of the lowest searched terms on Pornhub,
which I suggest you do not search for. No, I think it's interesting. Comedy as a speech tool and everything is, I think it has, in our life that was where we pushed limits of what was okay to talk about, like the Robin Williams and Richard Pryor and these tapes that used language that we didn't normally use in the house and covered topics we didn't normally talk about, and it was a way to sort of push those limits. And I love that comedy can do that, and I think when it's done well, it for sure does that, and that's its role. It seems a little bit easy also to say, my job's just to provoke, and it's like, well, but just being a jerk isn't comedy, right. Like that. But when comedians do it well, it is. With George Carlin and people that is super provocative, and Chappelle does a great job with that as well. I mean, some of his sketch comedy from years ago, which is what I'm more familiar with, was amazing. I mean, brilliant what it poked fun at, and what it's as relevant now as it was then. And there's certainly an interesting role there for comedy. It just I sometimes feel that sometimes bad comedians say, "Well, just we're too sensitive." It's like, or you're just not good at this.
Well, I think that the danger comes in when we start making different rules for good and bad, because it's like, one of the things that I love about Burning Man is that it's not just for good art, it's for art. And if you don't like it, you ride right by it. Okay. But there's something really, I think, important. That one of the magical things about the Burning Man vibe is that there are no obstacles to expression. And I think that that's one of the things that makes comedy so powerful, is that, and for a comic to think that he can say whatever, right? And because it's protected under comedy, right? And so when a comedian gets into a place that is offensive, or if comedians are feeling like they need to tiptoe around things, it's a little bit of I think it limits the medium and it limits its power.
That's fair. I just I think of I guess that's a good point. Having no lines, or having there being no limitation is hugely powerful, and it certainly can be good for a conversation, and even recognizing what you find offensive or not. Yeah. And again, I can't speak to. I just read a little bit about Chappelle and his stuff, and clearly he's just speaking what he feels. I don't know if it was funny or just statements he's making, but certainly he has got people riled up.
Yeah,
and talking.
I just read a David Spade book, Polaroid Man in a a Snapchat world. And it was interesting because there was huge parts of it that I thought were very funny and very relatable. And then he would get into a place of like, he was talking about how as a comedian, he can't talk about racial jokes. You know, like it's a black person can make racial, like, look at how a black man does this. Look at how a white person does this, you know, and it's like the old Simpsons joke. You know? Black guy drives a car like this. White guy drives a car like this. Ha 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 ha. And as he got into these realms of like where I felt like, oh, you're being a little tone deaf. Oh, you're kind of like oh, and places where I'm like, oh, I have aligned myself in a social philosophical perspective that is more evolved than what you are presenting. And it made me feel, I didn't enjoy him as much. It made me, it severed some of the connection I was feeling with him. But can I understand the frustration or the pressure to feel like you can't say certain things? Mm-hmm. I love what we both, you turned me on to Working It Out podcast, Mike Birbiglia.
Yeah.
And he often will bring up the absurdity of people having Netflix specials watched by, 20 million people, where people are complaining that they have no voice. They're being that in this world, man, you can't say anything, as they say whatever they want to anyone, to everyone.
Right.
So speaking of Working It Out podcast, actually, before we go to that, I want to talk as I've been listening to the Work It Out podcast, I've been thinking more about the art of comedy and like what would it take to do a comedy set. And do you ever think about that?
Yeah, and it's way more work than just being funny at a party.
Yeah.
Because it's so much crafting. Well, and it's sort of like the difference between improv and doing a set. Like doing a set feels spontaneous, but every word is crafted, and the ones that are good at it, again, do it night after night after night, and tweak and tweak and tweak and get different responses. I mean, and the host of that, Mike Birbiglia, talks about he's doing stuff for years before he presents it, in sort of a very public way, and the patience and the ability to just get that feedback again and again, and not get negative feedback. And that's just an entirely different level of confidence and loving the craft in a way that seems very challenging.
I've found that very illuminating to learn the process of them putting together a set or an act, and so some of the things begin as them just improving. Like they talk about like Chris Rock or Chappelle or other comedians that will just talk for hours on stage, and just and some of it hits people. They said that you can go see Chris Rock when he's just trying things out and not laugh for a very long time.
Oh, really?
Because he doesn't use his Chris Rock card, that just by being him, he can get a laugh. But he'll like try out material and it's level one of first draft. Right. And that's something that I didn't realize kind of how much it's a process, not of like rewriting, but of performing and then hearing how it goes, shifting, trying another word, seeing how that goes, which in some ways I feel like I do that as a storyteller.
Sure.
Like there are stories that I tell over and over and over and over again. And in fact, what recently happened was a person, a minister, they gave a sermon where they talked about a story that I tell about Grandpa. And it was so beautiful to hear the story turned, as a part of this really beautiful sermon. But when they told my story with their words, I was cringing. I was like, no, that's not, no. If you shift this word, it's so much more powerful. No, you got to pause there and then hit him with that, And it's like, oh, I've told that story, 1,000 times, minimal, and so I feel like I've done some of that same practicing, crafting, what things hit, what doesn't work, when you can, that detail that no one cares.
No, and it takes so much discipline to do that. I mean, it's sort of what is the saying? Writing is rewriting.
Yeah.
Did you listen to David Sedaris on that podcast?
Yeah.
So, his whole point was he reads stories that are not done so that he can do exactly what the comedians are doing. He's literally crossing things out at Carnegie Hall, that's okay, that didn't hit, and then crafty. I think that's so interesting because you think, oh, he's just reading final works. He's using it in the same way. These are drafts, and he's seeing when is the audience with him, when are they not, and anyway, it's that level of discipline to stick with that and take harsh feedback is that's dedication.
Well, that's the great thing about that podcast is they work out some skits, and I still kind of go like, oh, like when a friend will say to a friend like, you should do this, you missed this. I'm like, whoa, soften it up, like that doesn't hurt his feelings. So I'm like, oh, that's the job,
right?
Is you are constantly trying to be better, and you got to be so much humility. So one of the things that I heard spoken about that, which I thought was fascinating, was that a big role of the comedian is to like, let's see if we're struggling with our connection here. Yes, we are still streaming. Is creating or making the audience trust you.
Okay.
So that like there's this. I started noticing like this like total confidence, or they're playing a character with lack of confidence. Like like there's some people that do like an awkwardness, and that becomes like part of it. But otherwise, you rarely see a successful comedian that's making people laugh nervous at all. It's this like, trust me, I got you. Right. I'm gonna make you laugh. You relax. I got laughs coming. You just wait. Come with me on this journey. And I think that's a part of the grinding over and over and over and over and over and over again. You have to be in this, super practiced. Like, I'm just running a play. I got this.
Right. So thinking about that, does it take away? So one of the things I know you and I both are amazed by is spontaneous humor, sort of not necessarily improv in that traditional sense, but just people that off the cuff can be so funny. Adam Carolla, Paul F. Tompkins, some of the podcasts I listen to where it's impromptu, and there's a level of genius to that is absolutely blows me away. That impromptu. So knowing that is one style versus being able to be funny, but then also craft and shape it and shape. Does that make it any less impressive to you? Does it change that at all? When you think about comedians that have spent 100 hours doing a joke versus off the cuff.
I mean, I think part of the ones that have done 100 hours is to try to convey the feeling that they're doing it off the cuff.
Right.
Right. In fact, when people like have their books, or they're reading things, you're like, what?
Yeah.
I know that you have this memorized or this your practices, but you're breaking the spell of like, we're just chatting and you're just funny,
Right.
But I feel like it's I'm aware that it's a vastly different skill, which is why an improv laugh or a joke, punchline, it's like, I think it's a different measure. Like it's like, whoa, like that you pulled that together in the same time that I had to think of all those. Like you had no more time to think about this than me, and you came up with that. Like, whoa.
That's true. If you went to a script like Middleditch and Schwartz or something, you went. If this was a play we've written and we're performing, you'd be like, this is a little weird.
Yeah, right. Why did they do that? Like, how come it took them so long to get there?
Right, that makes no sense. But from an improv perspective, it's amazing. I mean, truly. I guess you're right. It's a different bar and it's a different art form. So I guess you treat it as such.
Like I've been watching on Facebook these like best of Whose Line Is It Anyways? And
so good.
And it's great because it like they'll show you just like one line from a skit. You're like, oh, I'm sure there was a bunch that they cut that were not funny.
Right.
But you see sometimes the brain firing and the commitment. That's part of the improv impressiveness is the 100% full commitment, jumping starting a joke when you might not know where it's going to go. Like you didn't practice it in your head and then go, oh, okay, I know where this one lands. You just like, it's like, wow, it's like if someone is a badass dancer that is just like feeling the music and going off, like that's something that's incredible. If someone is part of a well choreographed dance troupe, that is a whole different level of impressive to me. I mean, both I think are impressive, and I'm excellent at both.
Yeah.
You ready to start?
Yeah. No, you should freestyle this.
Okay.
I don't want to take away. I don't want to take away from.
Oh, you're generous. Let me have the stage on this one.
Sweet. There you go.
Sweet.
I'll drop a beat for you.
You mentioned Middleditch and Schwartz. I thought that was fantastic.
It was very funny, and the way they would, it was interesting because sometimes in the things they never under any circumstance kind of break the third wall, but there was a little bit of it that I thought actually made it more enjoyable.
Yeah.
Like forgetting names of things and kind of going back to it and kind of, what was my name again? And,
yeah.
So it just feels like it actually, like you said about getting sort of that trust and connection, you feel like you're sort of with them on this. But yeah, that level of creativity and commitment and just going for it in the most bizarre ways and trusting your partner on that is awesome.
Yeah. One thing that I heard Mike Birbiglia and
Pete Holmes?
John Holmes, actually.
Oh, John Holmes.
Yeah, they're talking about porno.
Speaking of funny questions.
Pete Holmes, yes. They were talking about how comedy today, it's pretty much expected that you are telling true stories. That they're saying that you think of a comedian is creating a whatever story is there for a laugh, and I'm sure I hear comedians that do that sometimes. Like that didn't happen.
Right.
But to those guys, that's not the comedy they do. They tell their true stories and then find the way to tell it in a way that is the most powerful. Right. Which I thought that's cool. Like I don't ever intentionally tell a story that's not true. But I certainly think that there have been times when I accidentally tell a detail that.
Well, yeah, it's what flourishes. Like there's ways to emphasize, embellish someone. Right? The crazy person at the store or whatever. Yeah, I could see that. But I think that's what makes it funny is that it's not just a totally made up story. Because then it feels like a joke. It's like, okay, an alien comes to the bar, and it's like that's different than a true story has its humor.
Well, and the way that they get those what are they called, tags or the word?
Yeah.
I don't know, but they say, it's not like I'm a blanka. It's not like it's this and this, or like I felt like a this and this, and so through simile you tell what would have been the fake story.
Okay.
At least that's, I don't know, maybe that's not true. So we're having some connection problems. So if you're still with us, you are a brave and patient soul.
Should wait for the future.
And you've earned this naked dance party.
That's right.
So I guess I've got a Google Doc open of like a possible comedy routine.
Oh.
Where I take some stories that I tell often that I think have some, hits to them, and like trying to turn it into more of a piece, like that would be a comedy piece. I mean, I did do, an hour one-man show a few years ago, and in watching it afterwards, I realized, this was the first draft that these comedians talk about. This is the first time I performed this, and I'm a little awkward at times. There's times when my timing isn't quite right, and like, if this was really going to be a one-man show, I would be advertising it after doing it 100 more times.
Interesting.
Which
sounds like a lot of work.
Exactly. This is my problem, my laziness.
Yeah.
But as I look at what I'm going to do with the rest of my life, it feels like maybe there's time to practice something.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So as things come to you, you just sort of keep a list of the home runs and the ones you want to sort of come back to. And...
Yeah, or a story that I've written and told. I've written it down and then trying to like go through it again and again. If where's places where this could be more like a comedy thing, you know, or one of the things that like comedians will do too. Like it's not like a written story. There are times when they go, like, what about you? You've ever had that? Or like there's times when they'll pause or they'll question or they involve the audience or they'll say things multiple times like it was this, you know, and you're like, okay, see how funny that was?
Right, and then just go get her done. You could say like get this done. And
Boop boop choo.
That could be your thing.
So,
by the way, our highly respected father just spoke to me extensively about how clever Larry the Cable Guy's humor was.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And I questioned if he meant the right person, just because I listened to a lot of comedy and I hadn't heard that. But he and I said with the get her done, like he might be. I actually don't know his comedy very well, but he's like, no, it's really clever. So I was like, that if you had given me 1,000 guesses, that's not who I would guess that he would think was funny. I think I need to follow up to make sure that he was correct.
I remember thinking, well, no, I don't. I just, yeah. I mean, I guess there's the art of comedy, and then there's the subject matter in it, and so I think whether or not you identify with the subject matter is what, you know, like they could be great comedians, you know, in the craft and the storytelling and the punchlines.
Yeah, and I'm sure I hold the catchphrase against him stuff, you know,
Yeah.
because but that's not fair. Again, I honestly, I never think that it'll be up my alley, and so I haven't really tried, and that's on me. So props to get a new recommendation, because that's again not the guy I would expect to be tapped into the blue collar comedy tour crowd. So
well, in full circle, you know. Keep an open mind and you know and letting comedy be a voice for things that we might not understand yet, or a way to work through our judgments of people like Larry the Cable Guy.
Yeah, maybe it's the name. I'm just gonna call him Larry. I don't want to limit what Larry's capable of.
Leonard. So anything else about your love of comedy that you want to confess to me?
Confess. Jeez.
Like we had two comedy tapes growing up that we listened to over and over. One was Robin Williams' Reality What a Concept, and Steve Martin, Wild and Crazy Guy, something like that.
Yeah.
And I remember that like
something like that.
Robin Williams is the one we listened to over and over again. And maybe that's one of the reasons why we love improv so much. I mean, huge chunks of that are improv.
Right.
And our family still has lines from that. Like there's a line.
Is that the "No son, look at the news"?
No son, look at the news. Yeah. And I'm not going to tell the skit because that would be a waste of all of our time. But there are, you know, there's a line in that our family still, it's a go-to.
It's from 40 years ago or something.
Yeah. And we did not, as a family, know that it was cocaine-fueled humor.
Yeah.
But since then, as a family, we've enjoyed it on cocaine.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And that's how Dad's interest in Larry the Cable Guy came to be. I don't know. I'm a simple man sometimes, and I like comedy and lighthearted things more so than there's a million deep, intense dramas that I haven't seen that I have to see, apparently, like The Wire or something that I'm sure I know is amazing, and someday I will. And just this week, someone told me I had to stay in all weekend and watch Breaking Bad every episode, and I just haven't, because I watch things that make me laugh. Yeah. But I've always just like I've always the ability to make someone laugh I've always found to be so profound. And so I still love, listening to comedians. I love when comedians can explain something that is either in everyday life or something they've thought about before, but in a way that just blows me away. And I unfortunately, some comedians rely a little too much on anger, and that makes it less interesting to me, because I'm more impressed when they can do, it's okay to have a sarcastic and acerbic wit about it, but to be positive and funny is it blows me. Like Pete Holmes is one of my favorites because of that, his ability to be positive and funny, and he uses bad words sometimes too, which I'm totally fine with, of course, but I don't know. I guess there's something so the ability to do that I find so magical that I keep coming back for more.
You reminded me that a big evolution in my spiritual path was when I discovered Jacob Glass, who is a guy who gives talks based on A Course in Miracles, that I got invited to, and I started going every week because he was funny. And I found myself laughing, and something about the state of laughter, it left me open in a way that, like, sitting and listening to a lecture or listening to a philosopher, like it, and I think even Alan Watts has some whimsy to him that I resonate with him, because it's not so serious. There's some humor in it. I went to a comedy show last week.
Oh yeah.
And I had an interesting experience where one of the comedians talked about his struggling with eating disorder, I guess, and that he goes to 12-step program, and he's he was like pre-diabetic and had real trouble with sugar and binging and stuff, and he told a story about eating so many grapes that he couldn't perform, and Becca's like hitting me, like I will eat way too many grapes. Grapes are one of those things that like gets through my shield. Like, it's fruit, it's natural, it's fine. It's like sugar. But I went to the grocery store this week, and I did not buy grapes, and I didn't buy other things, because this comedy sketch, this guy's routine, which has heartfelt things as well as big laughs, made me think and made me look at myself and made me go, all right. And I thought it was a cool example of how comedy is not just trying to tickle your funny bone. Right. It's also trying to communicate to you in ways that maybe you couldn't hear in other ways.
Yeah. That's good. And I think the best comics do that. They do get interesting points across, and, can be thought-provoking and even get you to cut back on grapes. That's what they say the greats do.
You know what? There are some frozen grapes in the fridge here.
Oh.
Thank you for joining me for this conversation.
Yes.
Sorry, I wish you were more funny.
Yes, I'm sorry if our conversation on comedy was not very funny.
But maybe we can do it again sometime. Yeah. Thank you for joining us. Share us with me in the comments something that you think is funny, someone that inspires you through their thoughts. And we appreciate the opportunity to share. Thank you.
Thank you.
Love you.